Okay, so let's start our Scorebuddy Masterclass, Elevating QA with Integrations. But before we start and I let our host start talking, I have a little bit of housekeeping. So first of all, about the audio, if you're listening, if you're hearing me now, if you joined the webinar and you can hear me, then you're just fine. But for those of you who can't hear me, the audio for this webinar is available over two options. So we have the computer audio and the telephone option. If your audio is not good, if your connection is not the best one right now, you can always dial in via phone, and you have the access code and audio pin in your screen. Okay, second of all, we have a demo prepared today, so you might have some questions, and we encourage you to ask anything you'd like to, so we can answer to you now or via email, but we have a question poll and you can feel free to use it. And third, this session is being recorded. So again, if someone from your company should be here and they couldn't because they had a clash in their calendar or something like this, don't worry. We will be sending the recording afterwards. Just make sure person register for it so they can receive it. Okay. And about the agenda, we'll have three topics today. So the first one is how to elevate your contact center QA with integrations. Then we will talk about why Scorebuddy prioritizes integrations. And we'll have the demo that Adam prepared for you. And then finally the Q&A. So now let's give it to Adam. Hey, Adam, you can present yourself.
Thanks very much, Mariana. So yeah, just as a quick introduction for myself, my name's Adam Gibson. I am a senior customer success executive here at Scorebuddy, and I have been here for coming up to 2 years now, coming in May. So look, I'm very excited for everybody to kind of see what we've prepared when it comes to the demonstration of the integrations and how that can be utilized within your own Scorebuddy accounts. And again, if there are any questions, feel free to post them in the chat and we'll be able to address them afterwards. But we hope you enjoy what we have prepared here today. So I suppose the first point of the discussion today, or of the webinar today, is how we look to elevate your contact center QA with integrations. And QA processes, much like any other areas of the business, efficiency is key. And that is really what we are positively impacting on when it comes to the integrations that we have available within Scorebuddy. And we achieve this through several key features of the integrations that we have within the system. For example, we have all key pieces of information that the evaluators might require in one place. So rather than having the evaluator click back and forth between, say, the help desk ticket information, the email information, and then back into the scorecard, this is all presented on a single screen, and that will improve the efficiency of the overall scoring process for the evaluators. Another key area that we have, or a key feature that we have when it comes to the integrations, is the ability to create lists that will filter down or focus in on the specific interactions that you might be looking to score within the system. So a common area of inefficiency when it comes to QA processes is actually finding particular interactions that we're looking to score. So we can often spend a long time looking for interactions that are suitable for scoring, and then only once we find them do we start that actual scoring process. So within Scorebuddy, through the use of our integrations and through the use of our lists with the integrations, we provide filters within there so that you can customize these lists to make sure that you're honing in on the specific interactions that are suitable for that quality evaluation. And that ensures that we are removing the time needed to actually find the interactions. They're all presented back to us within the lists that can be created using the integrations themselves. And then another key area as well is with the automation of those lists. So rather than having to every single time we're looking to evaluate, build out new lists and set new filters within the lists which we have already created can be scheduled within Scorebuddy. And these can be applied, or a schedule can be applied on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, depending on your specific needs. And what these lists will then do once they're scheduled is that they will automatically update according to the schedule that we've set within the settings, to ensure that new interactions are actually brought in according to the filters that we've already set within the lists. So through these three areas, we seek to improve on the overall efficiency when it comes to the QA process in general. And in terms of why Scorebuddy prioritizes integrations, why we have a key focus on integrations, is because at Scorebuddy, we recognize that people are often using multiple different tools as part of their work and as part of carrying out, say, evaluations, for example, on the system. And utilizing multiple tools can often lead to friction within the QA process. So again, it really comes down to the efficiency and the improvements in efficiency as to why we are kind of prioritizing the integrations within Scorebuddy, because through the use of through this friction that occurs when there are multiple tools in operation, it can lead to operational inefficiency. So by integrating the different help desks, the different systems into Scorebuddy, it helps reduce this friction, it helps improve operational efficiency, and in turn, that will then lead to a successful QA process, an successful QA program, and it also leads to a better overall customer experience when it comes to utilizing Scorebuddy in general. So when it comes to integrations, the best place to start off would be maybe to take a look at where these can be found on Scorebuddy itself. So you'll notice that within Scorebuddy, along the top, we have this score option, and beside it, we have this little drop-down arrow. And what this drop-down arrow indicates is that we currently have access to be able to set up integrations on the account. So if we click on here, you'll notice that we have the option for employees, which would just bring us through to select a group, select an employee, and select a scorecard. And that would be the usual manual scoring process that we would have within Scorebuddy. And then just below that, we have this option for interactions. And this interactions area is where we would go to access the integrations within Scorebuddy. It's where we can find the integration lists and how we can go about setting up integrations themselves. Now, if you notice within your own accounts that you don't have this little drop-down arrow beside the score, simply get in contact with your customer success representative and they'd be able to get that set up for you, get that configured. And they'd also be happy to help with any setup or configuration of the integrations themselves. So if we select interactions from here, you'll see that this will bring us through to our list page. And what this list page is essentially a list of lists that we have set up on the account. And these lists can be used for organizing maybe different processes or different interactions, different channels of communication that we might be looking to score on the platform. Now, when you first go through to this page, the lists will of course be blank as we've yet to set up any integrations on the system. So we'll look now at where we need to go in order to actually set up an integration, where we go to configure an integration within Scorebuddy. And to do that, it's simply a case of clicking on the View Integrations option. And then that will bring you through to this Add Integration page. And then from here, you can see that we have a variety of different integrations available for selection for connecting to Scorebuddy. So we have the likes of a CSV integration, which will allow you to upload a manual CSV list, which is useful for maybe analyzing or evaluating back-end processes which might not have an interaction or a call or an email associated with them. We have the option of integrating with Scorebuddy CX, which is our text AI tool, so you can connect that directly into Scorebuddy. We also have Five9, Freshdesk. We have an API integration for pushing in interactions via the Scorebuddy API. And we also have Genesis, which we'll take a look at now. So if we click on Add Integration, you'll see that this will bring us through to the setup or the configuration page. And essentially, it's going to ask us for a number of details to be entered on to connect to our Genesis environment. So the first thing that it will ask for is a label, and that's essentially just the name that we're looking to give to this particular integration. So a human readable label that will be associated with the integration. We also have a description where you can enter in what the purpose is for the integration itself. And then we would require some information from Genesis itself in order to connect to your particular Genesis client. So you can see that we would need a client ID, a client secret, and we also need to configure the region for our Genesis profile. Once we have that information in from our Genesis system, you can see that it will ask us to enter in a data retention policy. So the data retention policy within Scorebuddy essentially determines how long the information from the help desk is going to be stored and made available for scoring within Scorebuddy itself. So we can choose a range of different time periods here. So we can select whether it's days, weeks, months, quarters, or years. And that, as I said, will determine how long those interactions will be available for scoring within Scorebuddy. So it's important to ensure that we are setting this to a time period that will allow us to score interactions that will be interested in scoring. If we're interested in seeing things from still accessing interactions within the last couple of months, we might set our data retention policy to maybe a 6-month period. Or if we're still interested in being able to see and possibly score or audit interactions from 6 months ago, we might extend that out. So that will be something that can be determined based off of your own business requirements. We have the option then as well for a data backfill. And what this option will essentially configure is at the point of connecting the integration to Scorebuddy, do we want to bring in interactions previous to that point of connection? So say, for example, if we were to connect to Scorebuddy today, what this data backfill, if we were to select this, it would ensure that interactions as far back as we have set within our data retention policy. So for example, if we set 6 months within here, this will essentially mean that we're going to pull in the previous 6 months worth of interactions into the system to be made available for scoring. If we were to leave this data backfill unchecked, it would essentially mean that only from the point of connecting Scorebuddy to the integration or integrating Genesis into Scorebuddy, only from that point onwards would we start bringing in interactions. And then specifically with our Genesis integration, you'll notice that we have import screen recordings. So if you're a customer who's availing of the screen recordings feature on Genesis, it is of course possible to bring them into Scorebuddy, and they would be displayed within a different tab, and they're made available for scoring as part of the scoring process to the evaluators. Now, depending on the integration that you're setting up, the fields that are required may be different to what we can see here within the Genesis example. But with all of our integrations, we do have these instructions available below, and these will give step-by-step guides on how to set up and connect a particular system with Scorebuddy. So depending on which system that you're looking to connect, it might not be what we've covered here. It might not be the same fields that we've covered here, but we do, of course, provide instruction. And again, if you're struggling or if you have any questions or you need any assistance with it, by all means, please feel free to reach out to your customer success representative, and they'll be more than happy to provide any assistance with that. So once we have our integration connected, we would then need to match users on the integration itself. And the purpose of this and the importance of this is so that Scorebuddy knows how to link the Scorebuddy profile with the relevant Genesis profile or the relevant help desk profile for evaluation. So when you first connect, you will be prompted with an option to configure the agent matching. And once you click on that, it will bring you through to a page which is similar to this page here, where we can see a list of the Scorebuddy users, and we can see the Genesis users that have been connected with them. When you first go to this match user page or this user matching page, each of the Scorebuddy profiles will have this no match option beside it. And that basically indicates that that particular profile has yet to be matched with anybody on the help desk. However, again, when you first access the agent matching page, this Find Unmatched button will actually read Auto Match. And by selecting that, the system will automatically match any of the Scorebuddy profiles with the relevant help desk profiles. And this is done based off of the email addresses that are associated with them. So if the system can determine a link between the help desk agents and the Scorebuddy agents, it will of course link them. But if it doesn't determine that linking, it is of course possible to still manually match the agents. So we can at any point click on the drop down and select the particular agent that we are looking at matching them with on the system. So once we have the agents matched within the integration, we can then actually go and start to build lists and create lists. Again, we would need to make sure that our integration has imported some of the interactions. And at any stage, that can, of course, be seen on the main page. Below each of the integrations or below the integration that you have set up, it will, of course, say when the most recent interaction has been imported. Now, this process can take some time to import the interactions. So just keep an eye on it, and once it's updated to say that integrations or interactions are available, we can then, of course, go about creating a scoring list. So to create a scoring list on Scorebuddy, it is, of course, back within our list page, and you'll see at the very top here, we have the option to add a list. So we can simply select that, and then we'll be prompted with a couple of steps. Now, by default, this source field, if you only have a single integration set up, it will default to that integration. However, if there are multiple integrations set up, we can, of course, select which integration we're looking to use as the source for this particular list. So in this case, we'll simply select Genesis integration. And we would then need to give the list a name. So we might maybe set this one to weekly calls. We can then determine the type of list that we're going to be creating, but we'll come back to this once we've taken a look at the filters, as this type is very dependent on the filters that we're going to be setting up within the list itself. We would then need to select which staff we're looking to score within the list. So this can be done at a group level, a team level, or an individual agent level. And essentially, whichever is our right-handmost selection is the logic that will be used to find the people that we're looking to score within the list. And what I mean by that is if we were to select CS Ireland and then the Broadband Ireland team, it would mean that any users who are a member of this Broadband Ireland team will be brought into the list to be scored. Conversely, if we were to select CS Ireland and maybe the retail and e-retail, but we were to still only select the Broadband Ireland team, even though we have selected another group within here, because we are only selecting that one team, it will only pull in interactions for that one particular team, for the users within that particular team, and it will ignore any teams which aren't selected within this area. So of course, we can select singles within the group, team, or staff selector, or we can multi-select as part of this as well. So we can pick and choose who we want to be brought in to this particular list. Once we've determined the staff that we're looking to score within the list, we would then need to apply filters. And the filters are very beneficial and very useful for targeting specific interactions that you'd be interested in scoring. So this is where our integrations can really provide value in that you are not going and kind of moving through a number of interactions that are maybe not fit for scoring or kind of outside of what you'd be kind of the processes you may be looking to score. With the filters, we can actually target the specific interactions of a specific length, of a specific wrap-up type. We can target these to be brought into the list to make sure that they are suitable for scoring. So to add filters, it's simply a case of clicking on the Add Filter button, and then we will be presented with a drop-down of filters which can be applied. Now, again, the filters which are available within each integration are different depending on the integration that has been set up. So for the likes of Genesis, where we have tags, some of those tags would be available within Genesis, but we wouldn't have a relevant filter within the likes of, or sorry, they would be available within Zendesk, but we wouldn't have the relevant kind of filter within Genesis. So it all depends on the help desk itself as to what tags or what filters are visible within the filters themselves. One which is common across all of our integrations, however, is a created filter. So there will always be some sort of created date, created at style filter so that we can target when specific integrations or when specific interactions were created on the system or when specific interactions occurred. So the created filter would be one that we would always recommend in including in the list. And that is to ensure that you are targeting interactions that are appropriate to the cadence that you're looking for. So if you're only looking at scoring interactions that occurred maybe this week and last week, by utilizing a created filter, we can ensure that we're targeting those interactions specifically. So with the created filter, you'll notice that we have the option of selecting an operator, and we can select equal to, where we can apply a static date range, greater than or less than, which of course would mean that we're selecting anything, in this case, greater than the 11th of April, show me interactions for that. Less than, anything less than the 11th of April, show me interactions for that. And then we have our relative to operator within our filters. And this would allow you to determine a relative time period that we're looking at whenever we're building out a list. So for example, if we were only interested in seeing the interactions that were created within the current week, we can of course select that. And what this can be very beneficial is when it comes to automating the lists, by selecting and utilizing a relative time period in the created filters, it would mean that you wouldn't have to continuously go and update the dates within the lists. They would automatically look at that relative period whenever that list is updating and pull in interactions according to the relative period. You'll notice as I add in additional filters that they are populating and they're utilizing and logic within it. So that can be somewhat problematic in that if we were looking at maybe targeting interactions that were either the current week or last week, so that occurred within the last 2 weeks, the problem that will occur with this specific filter logic is that a specific interaction can't have been created last week and also been created this week. There can only be a single created date within that particular interaction. So what we allow within Scorebuddy is to utilize OR filter logic as well, so that we can again get more nuanced and more specific with the filters that we're adding to the lists. So to activate the OR filters, we have this advanced mode option at the top, and we simply select that, and then we can see we have this OR button that presents beside a specific filter. So if we select that again, you'll see that we're now looking for anything that was created within the current week or anything that the created date is set to last week. So this is now utilizing that OR filter logic to help get over that problem of the current week and last week. We have additional filters then that can be applied to the list itself. Again, this is dependent on the specific integration that you're working with. But within, say, our Genesis integration, we might be interested in targeting specific media types. So if we want to determine only pull in interactions where it is a call that we're interested in, or we can select chats or emails, depending on the style or the communication channel that you're interested in evaluating within this specific list. We also have options, again, for determining the duration of the interaction, the direction, whether it was inbound or outbound, or what the wrap-up code that was used within that list or within that particular interaction. So if we have specific wrap-up codes within our Genesis integration, we can, of course, target them within the list builder as well. Once we've determined the filters of the lists, we can then come back and have a look at the type of list that we are creating. So at the moment, by default, the type of list is set to all, and this will essentially mean that any interactions that match the filters that we have set, all of them will be pulled into this list and made available for scoring. We also have the option of a manual list, a random list, or a sequential list. So I'll first take a look at a random style list. When we select a random, you'll notice that we're presented with two additional fields for configuration within the list on the right-hand side. And this is essentially determining the number of interactions that we're looking to pull into it. So we have the option of determining a total number of interactions. And in this case, if we were to set, say, for example, 5 within this field, this will look at all of our agents that we have within our CS Ireland group. It will look at the filters we have applied, and out of that entire pool of interactions, it will pull in 5 at random. What this can mean is that we are potentially pulling in, say, 4 interactions for one agent and 1 interaction for another agent. There's a random possibility that it might be 5 interactions for a single agent. It is a completely randomized selection from the pool of interactions that we're looking in based on the filters that we have applied. If we're more so interested in ensuring that we have interactions for each of our agents that we're looking for within the list itself, we can utilize this number of interactions per match staff. So in this case, if we were to set 5 in this field, this will now look at each of the agents within our group. It will look at the filters that we've applied, and it will now pull in 5 interactions at random for each of those agents. So rather than being presented with a total of 5 interactions, in this case, we have 4 agents, so we'll be presented with 20 interactions, 5 at random for each of the agents within the selection. We also have the sequential style list, and this has a similar configuration to our random style list in that we can determine the total number of interactions and then the number of interactions based on the matched staff. And how a sequential style list will operate is that it will look for the first interaction that occurs that matches the filters that we have applied, and it will then pull in X number of interactions that immediately followed that particular interaction. So again, we could set the list to look for the first interaction that occurred either this week or last week that had a media type of call and that had a wrap-up code of process. It will find that, and it will then pull in the following 4 interactions into it. Or, again, we can ask that to be done at an agent level so that we're pulling in the first interaction for each of the agents, and then for each of the agents, the following 4 interactions that directly preceded that one interaction that was first matched. The final style of list that we have is a manual list. And this is more so used when you have a specific interaction within your help desk that you would be interested in evaluating within Scorebuddy. So we would be interested in being able to manually select that particular interaction to be brought into a list. So one thing that we'll notice with a manual style list is that with the other kind of lists, we would simply move down to our assignment stage and select create list. However, with our manual style list, we'll notice that we have this additional get interactions button. And if we select get interactions, it will pull in or will display to us any interactions which match the filters that we have, again, presented above. And it will then allow us to determine which interaction we're going to pull into the list itself. So we can, of course, select any or all of the interactions, depending on which ones we're looking to manually assign to the list. Once we've determined the filter logic for the interactions that we are looking to pull into the list, it then comes down to assigning this list to specific users for evaluation. Now, one thing to take note of with this is that depending on the group and team assignment of the evaluators, they may not have visibility of all of the users within the lists themselves. So, for example, if we were creating a list for the CS Ireland team, and we were then to say assign it to our general or other group, this would mean that we're assigning it to any evaluator within the general and other group to be able to score that list. However, due to the separation of groups and teams within Scorebuddy, users within a specific group do not have access to the data from other groups or teams. So it's important to ensure that when you're selecting your assignment, that the people that you're assigning the list to do in fact have access to the groups and teams that we're selecting for scoring in this particular list, so that they will then be able to see and input the QA evaluations under this particular list. The assignment stage essentially works in the exact same way as our staff to score stage, in that we can select on a group level, a team level, or an individual evaluator level. And again, whatever our right-hand-most selection is will determine the logic that's used when it comes to the assignment. So again, what we'll do for this particular list is we'll just assign it to our CS Ireland 2.0, and then we select Create List. So this will have now brought us through where we can see our weekly calls list has been set up. And if we click through into this, we'll see that we're presented with the 2 calls that we had selected. We can see the event date of those calls occurring, the case type. So if we had multiple channels of interactions within here, we'd be able to see whether it was voice, email, or chat. We can see the agent that this particular interaction is associated with, the supervisor of that agent, the reference number of the interaction, and then we can see the current status of the interaction as well. So we can see that for these 2 interactions, they're both currently in ready for scoring status. And what this indicates is that there has been nobody currently working on these interactions, and that they have not already been scored within the system. So to actually score these integrations or these interactions on the system, we simply select Score. We select the relevant scorecards that we're looking to utilize for scoring them, and we would then be brought through to our scoring page. So this is where we can see the true benefits of the integrations themselves, in that rather than having to flick back and forth between our help desk and Scorebuddy, all the information is presented directly on the one page. So we have access to the call itself. We can play the call. We have the option of changing the volume on both sides of the call, so on the customer side and on the agent side. And we also have the option of speeding up or slowing that down if required. Depending on the interaction itself, we may be presented with the transcript from Genesis for that interaction. We're also presented with metadata. So this is any of the data that's set up within your Genesis help desk that we would present within Scorebuddy to give assistance to the evaluator in helping understand maybe the background of the query. If the analytics are recorded within Genesis, we also make them available and display them in the metadata. And any of the participant data, again, can be utilized by the evaluator during the scoring process to assist and aid in the information that they might require to carry out the evaluation. So once we're happy with that and we're listening through to the call, you can see that we have the actual scorecard on the right-hand side of the screen. And in much the same way as the manual scoring process on Scorebuddy, we simply scroll through this and we enter in any of the information that might be required within here. So this would function in the exact same way as it does within the regular Scorebuddy process or the manual scoring process. And we can leave any commentary that might be required or any summary commentary at the end. And we also have the option, as we can see here, of the reference field being filled in automatically by the system itself based off of the reference ID of the interaction that we're scoring, and the event time as well. Event time and date are both filled in based off of the date of the interaction taking place. Once we're happy with that, we simply save the score and we're presented with our usual options when saving the score. Hit finish scoring, And that will bring us back to the list where we can see that we've already scored an interaction, and we're then able to move on to score the remaining interaction within the system itself. Depending on the amount of users that are working on the integration or on the interaction list, we may see different statuses within the list itself. So we can see, if we navigate into our daily list, we can see that we have a multitude of different statuses within here. We can see if a draft exists, this would essentially mean that another user with access to the list is currently scoring on this particular interaction. So maybe we might want to avoid scoring that one ourselves in order to avoid duplicate scores being logged on the system. Already scored by you is the status that we would have seen on the previous list, where we can see that we ourselves have already scored it. Already scored would indicate that another user has already scored this particular interaction. And again, it means that this one is no longer available for selection for scoring. And then ready for scoring naturally means that nobody is yet working on it. However, if we again navigate into it and we start making changes and save it as a draft, when we navigate back to that score list, you can see it'll indicate to us which interactions we currently have a draft open for. Once we have our lists created, we may want to have a look at scheduling and automating the lists on the platform. So we can notice at the moment that we have a schedule and we have various different statuses within there. So within our manual list, we currently don't have any schedule assigned to it, and no schedule can be assigned to a manual list as we have manually selected ourselves which interactions are going to be present within it. But within our other lists, you can see that we haven't utilized that manual scoring process. We have let the system randomly decide the interactions that are going to be presented within here. And in this case, we do, of course, have the option of scheduling. So to schedule it, if we click on the actual schedule itself, this will present us with the different time frames that we have available for scheduling. So we can either select one time, in which case the list will update a single time and it will never update again unless we set it to. Daily update would mean that every single day the list will update with brand new interactions for scoring. Weekly would mean that every week it would update, and we can determine which day of the week this is actually going to process on. And then monthly would mean that at the beginning of each new month, the list will update with a brand new set of interactions to be made available for scoring. One thing that you may want to do when it comes to the scheduling of the lists is determine what happens with the interactions that are already in that list that maybe aren't quite suitable for scoring. So maybe some of the interactions have matched the filters that we have applied within the list itself, but maybe there was an audio issue on the recording itself that meant that particular interaction may not have been suitable. We present two options within our list editor that allows us to determine what actually happens with the unscored interactions within a list. So we can see once we move back into the list editor, we have a remove all interactions that have not been scored and replace them with the settings below. This particular setting will mean that, again, anything that we haven't scored within the list will be taken out of it and it will be replaced with anything or be replaced with interactions that match the filters that we have on the list itself. And then conversely, we have the keep all interactions that have not been scored. And in this particular case, it would mean that any interactions which are not scored within the list will remain in that list until you would maybe manually decide to remove them by selecting a remove option and editing the list. By default, our lists will be set to keep all interactions that have not been scored, and that's to ensure that we're not removing any interactions from Scorebuddy without you being aware of it. But again, if it is a case that you don't want those lists to keep building up and up with unsuitable interactions for scoring, we would recommend utilizing this remove all interactions option. So we've taken a look at the integrations, the direct integrations that we have for our, in this case, Genesis system, but of course there are multiple integrations that we have available directly into a help desk. But now we're going to take a quick look at our manual CSV upload as well, that we also have available within Scorebuddy. And this can be utilized for maybe looking at particular cases that might not have an interaction associated with them. So if there's no, say, call, there's no email associated with it, it's a process, a back office process that you might be looking to audit, that can of course be done with Scorebuddy by utilizing our manual CSV upload. So again, to set this up within our integrations tab, selecting add integration, we have this CSV integration option. We can simply select that and we'll be required to enter in a label and a description as well as a data retention policy. With the CSV upload, there is no requirement to match the users, as the user matching is done and configured within the CSV file itself. When we are looking to upload a CSV list to the system, we simply need to select this upload list option, and that will bring us through to our CSV uploader page. And then within here, we can set the list name. We might set it as back office tasks. And then we have our destination, which is where we can select our CSV integration that we would have set up previously. We would then be required to upload our CSV file. Now, the CSV file itself has to have a particular structure for the first number of columns in order for it to be accepted. And that structure can be found at any stage within the Get Help section. By scrolling down, you'll see that it will tell us that the first column needs to be our staff ID. The second column would need to be our external staff ID, so the ID of the staff member within your own external system. And then the case ID itself, so the case ID of the particular process or particular interaction that you're looking to evaluate within the CSV upload. With this as well, with this Get Help section, if there are any issues with uploading, it will present each of these issues that we have, a multitude of different limitations that we have for the CSV upload, and it will indicate what that particular issue is and how to go about addressing it within the CSV file itself. So I've put together a very quick example of a CSV file. So we can see that within here, we have our staff ID, and this would correlate with a staff member that we have on Scorebuddy already. So this would be the Scorebuddy ID of that particular user. So this is how the CSV manual integration will link this to a particular agent on Scorebuddy itself. We have the external staff ID and the case ID as is required by the uploader. And then after that, we have a multitude of different pieces of metadata that we want to present to the evaluator to assist with their scoring process. So for this particular example, I've simply gone with an action date, originating departments, manager approved, and a status configuration. But again, the fields which are included after the first three fields are configurable by yourself. So whatever information that you're looking to include within the CSV, as long as they're presented after the first three fields, the staff ID, external staff ID, and case ID, they can, of course, be included within the CSV uploader. So once we have that selected, we simply need to select that actual CSV file from our folders, and we're then presented with whether or not it will be accepted by the system, or if there are any errors, again, we can refer back to our Get Help section to help diagnose and troubleshoot the errors that are being presented. And then similar to our direct integration with the help desks, we're presented with the option of assignment. So we just need to select who we want to have availability to this list for scoring on the system. And we then select Create List. And in a similar view to what we had with the direct integrations, you'll see that we're presented with a list and a status, and then we can select a score and move through where we can see the different pieces of metadata that were uploaded. And we also have the scorecards beside it as well. The final type of integration, which is possible within Scorebuddy, would be an API integration. So again, this was one that we can see if we go to add integrations and we have this Scorebuddy option. And this API integration will allow you to programmatically enter interactions into the system. So if, say, there is an integration or a help desk which is not currently supported, we can, or you can build out programmatically the scripts to be able to export the information from your own help desk and then programmatically enter it in via our API. Now, there is quite a bit of configuration and tuning that goes into that. So if you are interested in an API integration, please get in contact with your relevant customer success executive, and they'd be more than happy to provide any assistance.
Thank you so much for the demo, Adam. And now for the Q&A. I have two questions here. The first one is about the webinar, so the recording. So I'll answer myself. So it's asking where the recording will be available. We'll send the recording to everyone that registered and attended the webinar. But if you want the webinar to be sent, the recording to be sent to someone from your team or from someone from your company, then just make sure the person registered for the webinar that they will receive it. And the second question is about the integrations. So it's asking, they're asking how many integrations Scorebuddy has and where they can learn and suggest new integrations.
So when it comes to the integrations, Scorebuddy has, there's plenty of integrations that we currently have available within the system. So we took a look there at the Genesis integration specifically, but we also have the likes of Five9, Zendesk, Freshdesk, and we are continuously developing new integrations. So we have integrations within our development pipeline as well, so that number will keep on increasing. And if it is a case that you're looking to suggest an integration for ourselves, simply get in contact with your relevant customer success executive, and they'd be more than happy to take that on board and note it down as an integration that you're interested in seeing on the system.
Okay, so if anyone has any other questions, you can send us a reply by an email or send in the question poll. So let's go. I'll keep moving. Before we wrap up, I just want to tell everyone that attended and that are listening to, that are watching this webinar later, that we will have another webinar about AI. So Derek, our founder and CEO, and Emmanuel, our director of product, will be conducting this webinar, and it will be really interesting. We'll talk about the pros and cons of automation and artificial intelligence for the call center QA. Make sure you register for it. I can send the link to it afterwards. And we that's it. We don't have any more questions. So first of all, thank you, Adam, for your time, for the demo. It was really insightful, really helpful. And I want to thank everyone that attended and that's here until now. Just to keep a quick reminder that after the webinar, we will have a quick survey. We just want to hear your feedback about this session and what we can do better or what other topics would you like to see. And thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.